Hello there ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Common Sense Guys channel. Today we're going to be doing a story about Hofstad again, and about Brexit, and the fact that the EU budget wasn't able to actually come together. Because apparently when the member states, yeah, you heard me correct, that's how they're going to define actual countries that are in the European Union as. Not countries, member states. And that's from Verhofstadt. So let's get into this video and let's actually have a look at what I'm talking about, shall we? So ladies and gentlemen, let's start with the actual story that matters at this minute in time. The EU Budget Summit ends without agreement on bloc's long-term financing. I wonder why that could be. I wonder if they're trying to find where there's a 75 billion euro deficit, or anything between 60 to 75 billion euro deficit, that is actually just from the UK paying the equivalent of a tax or funding or budgetary needs to the EU. I wonder if that's the reasons why to quote Guy Hofstadter, the member states, because that's how he actually quantifies countries that are actually in the EU as states, not as countries, but that's something we'll get into very, very shortly, wouldn't actually want to pay to the equivalents to add up to that 60 to 75 billion euros. Interesting, isn't it? That Brexit apparently was going to hurt the UK more than what it was going to hurt the EU. Remember, 60 to 75 billion euros of a deficit just on the budget collection of taxes to decide what we're going to do for funding. That doesn't include trade, as in what the EU buys off of us or what we would pay into the EU to buy off of them. This is just basic tax collection of a 60 to 75 billion deficit. But you know, obviously, that doesn't mean anything. So a 2-day EU summit aimed at agreeing the bloc's long-term financing plan has ended without agreement. I can't think why, obviously. Can you guys think of the reasons why? Well, apparently it failed to close a gap between the Frugal Four. Interesting terminology there, isn't it? Frugal, meaning to the point of being stingy with money, not wanting to pay your fair share. Interesting language, isn't it? That want to cut spending. As in, they want to spend more money on themselves rather than putting it into an EU state that has a 60 to 75 billion euro deficit. I can't think why they wouldn't want to pay more money into a federalised state or federalised government in general. I have no idea why. And other net beneficiaries of the EU budget who prefer to keep the status quo. In other words, I'm not going to be paying more to cover the fact that the UK has left the EU. You guys are going to do it. Interesting, isn't it? It's all been complicated by Brexit, apparently. The UK paid more in than it took out. And that has left a hole in the budget of up to 75 billion euros. Interesting, isn't it? Unfortunately, we have observed that it is not possible to reach an agreement, said Charles Michel, President of the European Council, speaking at a post-summit press conference. We have observed that we need more time. In other words, we need to pressure the member states, not countries, to be able to get the actual definition, the actual point that we want. Because nobody actually wants to pay their fair share, because other people were paying the lion's share of it. I can't think for the life of me what country was doing that, especially to the actual point of 60 to 75 billion euros for the EU, just for budgetary needs. We know that this European budget is a very difficult topic and very difficult negotiation, especially after Brexit and the gap it has left, again to the 60 to 75 billion. Apparently they have worked very hard in order to try to reach different concerns, different interests and different opinions around the table. In other words, we already pay our fair share, we want other people to pay their other fair share. In other words, trying to find a way of collecting more tax off of countries. Again, we'll get to that very, very shortly. So, the so-called Frugal Four of Austria, Denmark, the Netherlands and Sweden, and a few others, believe the EU's 2021 to 2027 budget should amount to 1% of the bloc's GDP. Interesting. On the other hand, many of the poorer member states of the European Parliament wanted to stick with a bigger budget of 1.3 to fund ambitious climate change and digital economy policies, ones that actually require them to restrict all of the digital platforms and freedoms that, freedom of speech has. So just to go through that again, you have Austria, Denmark, the Netherlands and Sweden that are actually wanting to reduce the bloc's GDP, as in their budget, by 0.2 to 3%. But the EU doesn't want to reduce that because it's already losing 60 to 75 billion euros, which also mean that it would lose more euros from the fact of actually dropping that 0.3% that the actual bloc would actually have to pay. Interesting, isn't it? That the UK, when leaving, wouldn't actually cause any problems whatsoever to the EU, apparently. They're too big to fail, aren't they? So the actual budgetary period to decide when and how the budget is going to be set and for how much actually expires at the end of this year at December. So if they aren't actually able to find out how they're going to set their budget and where it's going to come from, then it seems very likely that the budget won't actually get set. But you know how the EU is. They have their informal consultations, their informal negotiations, and somehow they'll probably get the way that they want. Just so everybody actually understands what the relevance of that 0.3% of all nations of the 27 member states, it would be around about 230 billion euros difference. I wonder why they're trying to push hard on an increase to 1.3%, isn't it? 230 billion euros difference. The main reasons why I did this video is to show you that now that there is a budgetary deficit and how they are now scrambling, should we say, to try and fill that deficit and find out where the deficit is going to be filled from and so on and so forth, I wanted to show you a couple of videos of how I know, and I'm sure you guys know, that the EU has always wanted to become a federalisation. They wanted to become a federal government. Hence the reason why Guy Verhofstadt always equates our countries as member states, not as countries. Because he sees us as states, as in like the United States. Don't believe me? I will play you this video and then I will explain as well in his tweets how he is now trying to use this deficit to be able to push the idea of turning the countries that remain into a federalisation of government, to force those countries to turn into member states of the EU. But first of all, that video.
Member states have always feared of an in-depth reform of the Union, but let's face the reality, they are with their back against the wall. So it's now the moment to reform the European Union, to make it a real union and not a loose confederation of nation states still based on the unanimity rule. Always acting too little, too late. You cannot govern a continent like Europe if you still need the approval of all 28 member states. So that's the first thing to do. Then a smaller, less bureaucratic, real European government, not a commission of 28, but a small commission. And then also, a European Defence Union, because there is a threat from outside the Union. We see it in our neighbourhood. in Ukraine, in Syria. We need also a European Border and Coast Guard to really manage the migration flows. I think that there is no other solution for Europe than to do these in-depth reforms we are proposing. Because otherwise we're going to disintegrate further. It happened already with Brexit. Other countries could follow. We don't want a number of institutional reforms in the Union because we like institutional reforms. We want it because we think that we will have then better instruments on the European level to tackle the challenges that people are seeing today.
Right, so ladies and gentlemen, some very scary stuff there, wasn't it? The fact of he is quite happy to spout off the idea of having a federalised Europe. In fact, he is so proud of the idea of taking away sovereignty from actual nations, countries, with different regional dialects, different regional perspectives and different regional cultures, encompass them and forcing them to pay a singular tax, a singular idea, and forcing themselves to lose their sovereignty just to be part of his European idea, his European dream, so to speak. But if you think that those ideas are something that he just says every now and again, no, he uses almost every single setback or every single plot point or plot twist to be able to push his agenda of actually trying to federalize the whole of Europe. Now, I know to some people this may not be actual news and it may not be important, but to a lot of people, I do remember when people were telling me that the European Union isn't a case of it becoming a federalized nation. We're not going to lose any of the ideas of our sovereignty. We're not going to lose any of our individuality as a nation. In actual fact, we're going to keep it. We're going to celebrate it while being European. Well, apparently not. Apparently the idea from Europe as a whole is to somehow eventually turn it into a federalization, a federal government, similar to the United States. Why? Because it's a fight against the US, it's a fight against China, and we have to try and federalize ourselves to battle empires, apparently. So let's have a look at Guy Verhofstadt's tweet from around about February the 12th, 2020, this year. I'm going to keep everything in this year. You can go onto his Twitter account, you can have a look through his timeline, and you can see different aspects that he actually uses this or using other things as a way of being able to push his agenda. So Guy Verhofstadt actually tweets out, "It's time EU leaders put their differences on the EU budget aside and make an agreement with the EU Parliament." Interesting. Differences should be put in perspective. The debate is whether to spend 1% and 1.11% or even 1.13% of EU GNI. Now, remember, this is all to do with the idea of having a budget for the European Union to be able to dish out to other people and so on and so forth in the European Union. So he finishes this sentence off with, "When we need a sovereign Europe capable to act in the world." Now, with the context of understanding that he wants a federalized European Union, this should at least put you to a pause on the reason why Guy Verhofstadt and others that also support him as well is trying to push for a sovereign Europe. In other words, supreme power to Europe, the EU. Not to the countries, not to the countries that are in partnership with the EU, but the EU itself. That will be the federal government. That will be what dictates to all of us what we can and cannot do. So all of the people that were saying that Brexit wasn't about sovereignty, oh dear God, yes it was. I myself, and I'm sure that many others, do not want to be a part of a federalized Europe. These are what people are actually pushing at the minute. So let's move on to another tweet from Guy Verhofstadt. Again, still in February. This is February the 17th. And this again is fighting like ferrets in a bag as EU tries to plug the Brexit cash hole. Again, the 60 to 75 billion euros that have now been lost to the EU because of us actually gaining some semblance of, yes, common sense in leaving the idea of trying to lose our sovereignty and losing our own will and purpose in the world. So Guy Verhofstadt says in a tweet, using this as another example of being able to push his, should we say, Mendus Operadum, in other words, his philosophy, every time it's the same sad spectacle. Member states, not countries, not sovereign nations, but member states. This is Guy Verhofstadt's actual opinion of places like the UK, of places like Italy, of places like Romania, like Lithuania, and all of the other countries, sovereign nations in the EU, that all they are is member states. And all of these member states are trying to skimp on their contributions. His idea is, let's take Europe seriously. The idea of a singular nation, a federalized nation, which will be the European Union. So he wants a budget for every 5 years instead of 7 years. He wants lower national contributions. Interesting. I'm not sure how we will get that out. But he wants to own resources. He wants the EU to own national and sovereign resources, as well as by not taxing citizens, but big tech and big polluters. In other words, he actually wants to directly enforce a taxation onto businesses to collect money off of them as a federalized nation. Now, again, a lot of people may already know this. A lot of people won't. But again, this is the argument of sovereignty. This is the reason why we wanted Brexit. To get away from the idea of losing our sovereignty. People like Guy Verhofstadt and others that support him want to lose their sovereignty because of the idea of a federalized nation. The idea of the European project. This is its final goal. This is its final form. Well, that comes to the end of the video, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. Please do not forget to like, share and subscribe to this video and to the channel. Thank you for all of the support that you do give me and you do give to the channel as well. If you do want to give any sort of support to me to be able to make this a full-time profession so I can actually do this more often, to be able to give you more videos more quicker, then please look at the links down below. Again, thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. I really do appreciate everything that you can do. Even if it is just watching the video, it means a lot to me. Thank you very much. I'll speak to you all again real soon. Take care. Bye-bye for now.